not all the walks and visits are successful. So here we're going to have a look at a little walk I took into the woods around Rambouillet, which is west of Paris. And we'll see that actually there's a couple of problems sometimes in some trading sites that prevent the usage of this site for really good trading. So first, you see here that I'm walking on some trails that are actually with a soil that is quite hard, so the substrate doesn't register really well the prints, the tracks of the animals that are passing by. So in front I'm going to have a look into a zone which has better substrate with a more sandy area and less compacted. What's important is to summarize the previous video that the soil registers really well the tracks of the animals and that there are actually animals that pass by. So here during this beautiful day it looks very good because the previous days there was massive rain. So it's going to be quite easy to discern if some of the tracks are quite recent or if they are old. And our goal is to find what is called very fresh tracks, so that under 3 hours, that's typically the best aging of tracks, the best age of tracks that we want to follow. That means that it's going to be very, very fresh tracks. So I know that in front of us, there's going to be a downslope with a very sandy area, and on the left there's also the same kind of substrate with very sandy and soft sand that can register well the tracks. When I arrived there, I see in the distance that there are actually dogs and a human who is walking there. So actually I'm not going to go first into this direction. You can see in a few seconds the dogs right there that are actually walking. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have dogs in the area. Actually, it's very good sometimes to try to follow them. They tend to go a bit all around, so that's sometimes that can be hard because they go back on their tracks. But most of the time, you can really train yourself by following one dog, then one dog in a group of 2 dogs, etc., etc. So it's not really a bad sign, but I'm more looking for ungulates here, wild ungulates. So that's why I'm going to try to focus on another area. And also sometimes you can't see some tracks because they were erased or stomped over by the dogs. So what we can see here is the substrate is quite clearly the one where, of course, we see the dogs, but we see also that there was rain before. So we see this kind of granularity that shows the aging. And that means that every track we are going to see and find which is fresh is really within the last 12 hours. So in order to not go in the area where there was the dogs, I decided to turn left. And then there's going to be another downslope which leads to a big area with a lot of sand. And I know that in this area there was quite a lot of ungulate, namely red deer last year. So it's going to be useful here to confirm. It's important to know about the behavior of wild game and wild animals. It's that these animals are not going to be in the same area all the time. So typically what we have here with red deer is that the red deer tend to do their rut season in one place, which is not this area. And when they are done, they come back up to this area, which is a bit more upper land, where it has a bit more relief, and they can go up in the slopes and rest and eat and recover from the rut season. the rut season is spent much lower in an area which is more swamp with water, with big open areas. So we can, on the way, look at the habitat. On the right, you can see that it's very open forest, very clear. You can see a very long distance in the woods. And typically, this is absolutely not a place where red deer would love to rest, because it's too open to see for everyone. But they like to be able to cross this area to sometimes feed there. Now, where they are going to rest is more like is on the left, where on the left you're going to see by comparison that it's much more thick, and there's many more lower vegetation which shields and hides the animals from the view. Also, this habitat is going to change a lot depending on the season. For example, on the right, you see that under these conifers, there's very often a lot of ferns that are very high during spring and summer, and at the beginning of autumn too. And during the first big winds or snow, these ferns go within a few days from 2 meter high sometime to basically non-existent. So during these times, there's going to be a massive change in habitat for the red deer or for any kind of animals that live there. And therefore, you're going to see some areas that were very much used at some point that get completely empty, because these animals don't find the shelters they used to have. What's interesting is that sometimes you even see them going back to this area as if they wanted to check if there was again the shield or the cover. And that was quite weird and interesting to see this kind of behavior of them going back, checking, and then going away again. So here on the right, you're going to see that there's another direction which I don't take, because within maybe 100 meters, it goes from sandy substrate to actually hard rocks. So on the right, it's not suitable, and I've been there a few times before, so I'm not going there again. During these walks, I take the habit that I use during trailing session of keeping my eyes on the horizon when walking, so that I can detect any kind of movement, any kind of animal shape. And then when I need to stop to look at some track traps or tracking plates, to look at some tracks on the ground, then I stop walking, and then I can look down. I take also advantage of this time to look around in order to see if there's something, and there I can study. What I can see is that there are a few tracks, but most of them are actually human and dog tracks. Also, at this point, the substrate is getting better, so that's great, but it's still not the perfect substrate that registers so well, which is like soft, purely soft sand. So use these walks as conditioning for yourself, so that you take the habit of stopping when you look at the ground and completely stop walking, and to look left and right when you're basically when you're periodically stopping or walking, and then looking with your head up when you're walking straight ahead, using your peripheral vision to detect any kind of tracks. it's also sometimes good to look behind you, because the animals are super smart. They really know how to deal with humans and with other animals in their habitat. So they are going to circle around you. And sometime when basically you've been detected and it's a bit game over, well, the animal is going to go away, but you can anchor the place where he was or it was, and then go there. And you're going to try to find its tracks. And you know it's very fresh because you saw the animals. So you're going to be able to then practically do some exercise on some tracks that you know, which is absolutely fresh, and that's super useful. So here we are going to test the substrate and see that it's actually getting really good to register tracks. So this starts to be a substrate which is very soft enough that any kind of ungulates, being of course red deer or roebuck, roe deer, or even smaller animals such as dogs, fox, rabbits, hare, etc., can have their tracks into this. Sometimes it's fine enough to be able to register very well the tracks of much lighter rodents. So when we talk about tracks and signs that are left by animals, just make sure to really look not only for the prints of the footprint, but sometimes you can see the droppings, the scats of the animals. And very often what's really great is that if you're not really good at aging for tracks, actually aging scat is much more easy. No, you don't need to touch it. You can just have a look at it. There's basically a few things that you can do. Is first to see if it's wet. If it looks wet, then it's kind of recent. Of course, if it didn't rain just the few minutes before. If it's with some kind of whitish membrane that is on the scat, that's even more recent, let's say 1 hour. Also, something else you can try to look at is that with a stick, you try to crush the scat open, and you're going to see if it's the same color outside and inside. So if it's the same color, then it's super fresh because oxidation did not happen. So the outer shell has not changed color, and you're typically going to see some scats there that are most of the time less than 1 hour, or sometimes less than half an hour. Now look at the change of habitat on the left. You see the very new saplings of conifers. These are really a good place for the deer, and especially red deer, to rest. They typically go under the branches, and you'd be surprised to see how small the openings they can go through for such big animals. So when you see that, you can be quite sure that this could be used, this would be used if there are some animals of this type in the area. And it's quite important to be able to adapt your rhythm of trailing when you see these in advance. It was one of my very not big failure but big learnings, or actually big failure to not adapt my trailing rhythm to the habitat or to the changes I see. Also, when you go here down a slope, typically at the top of the slope, you want to slow down because, as I said earlier, the red deer are often going to be there resting, and then if you want to detect them before they do, you need to stop and very often to use your binos in order to detect the animals. When you're walking around in the nature with some experienced trackers, what I learn with them is some kind of knowledge that happens during the time where I'm experiencing some other things, where I'm experiencing the habitat, the terrain, the soil, the substrate, the wind. So these learnings become part of my habits, of my reflexes when I'm on site in the field. And I find that super useful because this is something that comes back automatically, and that is not like something that I have to recall, so it's kind of effortless. I hope that this video can have a bit of the same effect, but it's not the same as being in the field, of course. So once again, nothing replaces the experience of going outside. Now we see that we arrive here at a place where there's really much more sand, and we can see that the substrate is much better. Even from a distance, you can actually witness the effect of rain. So it leaves these thousands, millions of little drops, where little holes where the drop has fallen down, and you're going to see tracks, but only dogs and human tracks. So that means that between yesterday, when there was rain, that's the last weather event in the chronology in terms of rain. Well, you can see that within the, let's say, last 12 hours, there was absolutely no deer. So that doesn't mean deer is absent here. Deer could be present, but what that means is that they are not frequent enough to be reliably at this site at this moment. We can see there's cars, and we can see next to it, you can see the little drops, and if I scrape, you're going to see that the sand is much more yellow. So you really see the difference here between the sand that has been wiped or aged by rain and the rest. Importantly, you want to pay attention to the path of animals that they live in the vegetation on the left and right of your road, of your dirt road, because these are places which are often used, but if you don't see any kind of track that come out of this path on the dirt road, then you're going to say, okay, these are not frequented right now. One thing to recall is that the tracks indicate very easily if it's recent or not. And here you can see there's tracks which are for all deer tracks, but no recent tracks from these deer. So that may mean that actually these paths are not very much used these days by these deer. Also, the tracks will wipe very easily, will be erased very easily from the sand, whereas the path in vegetation are going to stay there for a very, very, very long time. So if you see some kind of runs or path in vegetation, that absolutely doesn't mean that animals came through this place very recently. If you're just starting in your identification of a trading site, you just put these path of animals and you just look at the road very precisely, very minutely, where these paths start, and to look for hooves, tracks of big animals, big ungulates. And that's going to give you a very clear idea of the usability of this site for your trading session. So by doing that, you can cover a lot of ground without looking so minutely at the ground as I do here. And at the beginning, that's possibly what you want to do, is to be faster in your coverage of a lot of distance, and then focus on the place where it's kind of frequent and easy and good substrate. So here we can see a lot of tracks from dogs. This place in the Rambouillet forest is a place between villages, which is very popular for dog walkers. So sometimes you see people with 10, 15 dogs, sometimes not even dogs on leash. So they are sometimes roaming and creating issues with wild animals that are around. And here we can definitely see that there's not much wild animal tracks. A very good example here of a path that end up on a tracking plate. So this track trap enable you to really quickly see if this path is used these days or within the last here 12 hours. And the rain will have wiped clean all the tracks from before, or at least aged them enough so that you can distinguish between recent tracks and new tracks. So sometimes you can also go a bit forward and look within this path if there's some other tracking plates. So here we see a little mole mound, and when there's no tracks either on the tracking plate, it means that really it's not used. You'll note that sometimes there's a parallel path to human path that are used only by animals, and they actually go something like 10 to 20 meters away but parallel to the human tracks. And it's quite interesting to see this behavior. They kind of use the opening, the general opening, but do not walk sometime on the actual road or the dirt road. That's why I frequently go 10-20 meters within the vegetation to look for paths and look for trails that would be parallel to the dirt road. So while walking, it's not just a static environment. Even if you're just scouting for a trading site, you're going to hear something. So here there's something making noise in the distance. And typically it's a dog chasing something. So it's always useful to stop and to have a look and to try to discern in the distance what's happening. Very often I see some dog owners that didn't control their dog enough, and basically the dog goes running after some wild animals for sometimes kilometers or miles. And that's of course a problem for the wildlife in general. But by paying attention, that enables you to see what is in the area, what kind of animals, and then sometime to go after a fresh trail, which is always super useful when you're starting. You want to trail fresh trails. It's much harder to trail on older trail. Even a difference of a few hours will make a lot of difference. So here I'm still looking, and in the distance on the right, maybe you're going to see that on the video, but actually you see the dog is kind of after a shape. So I don't know if we see it very well, but there's possibly more someone with his dog on a bike than actually any kind of wild animal. Sometimes it's also people who are with horses. Yeah, so I think we don't see it very well on the video, but the dog pass by in the distance following something. So I go back onto my direction of travel and trying to find if there's any kind of wild ungulates here. So far, no luck. I keep looking in the distance, trying to detect if there's animals around. And even though I didn't find really the tracks of wild animals that I was looking for, especially red deer, it's still a gorgeous day and a gorgeous walk. So what's great is that by going outside, you always get more closer to nature, more open in terms of your senses. You're more listening and reading nature. And actually this does bring a lot of change in your trading practice. So even though it's a failed site visit, and it's not a proper trading site right now, One thing that is really great is that each time we go out, we go see the effect of weather, of rain, of wind, of sun on the tracks, on the substrate, on the terrain. And we are learning each time after another. We're also learning where, at what time of the year, some animals are or are not. And knowing that we are probably not going to find some animal at a place or another is super useful. It's something that is going to give you this kind of predicting tracking capability where you're going to predict where it's likely that you're going to find some wild animal or not. And sometimes it can even feel magical when you see senior tracker. I had the opportunity to see a few of them, and they really sense stuff where you're like, wow, how did they get that? And the further you go, the more you understand that these are just habits and reflexes and way to read the nature, which enables them to deduct and to analyze what's happening. Even close to the water, there's absolutely no track of red deer. So we can pretty much say that there's not much activity around here at this time. And sometimes it's just a matter of going 500 meters away and you're going to see plenty of concentration activity of red deer. So you need to cover quite a lot of distance at the beginning in order to find the ideal site for your trading activity. Now I consider this area um, useless for now as a trading site. So I'm going to actually turn back and go back to another area in order to check. I'm still looking down when going back because our brain gets accustomed to read tracks in the way forward. That means that if you are following the tracks of an animal instead of going in reverse, going in front of the track, you're going to usually detect much more easily the tracks of this animal. And remember that when we are doing these trailing sessions, we are actually rewiring our neural pathways in order to detect faster these tracks. So the more you see them in a distance, the more you see them in a different substrate, the more you see them in the direction of travel that you want to follow, the better you're going to distinguish them the next time you see them. And that's really what we are building. We are building a database in our mind, a living database of capabilities, of neural detection capabilities that are going to enable us to detect further, earlier, any signs that enable us to trail more efficiently the animal. I'm going to start hearing a jay, a blue jay, screaming in the distance in the back, which is going to tell me there's something happening. And then when it's very close to you, usually the birds are just shouting and screaming, oh, watch out, there's a human here. But when it is in a distance, you can pretty much say that it's not you that they are screaming at and warning about. So it means that there's something else. And it can be an animal, it can be a dispute between birds, but it can be another human also. And that's really what we are going to try to use in the future and to detect. Here you can see that actually it's a human and his dog who are far away. I'm going to zoom in, and you can see the source of the disturbance here. Now I'm going to end this video. You see an excerpt of scouting and identifying sites for trading. Here it's important to understand that all these videos are useless if you don't get out in the field. Watching video alone is never going to make you a good tracker. And to trail animal, you really need to develop your senses, to build this internal database, to rewire your brain so that you detect early these signs that enable you to say, okay, I'm on the good track, I'm going in the good direction, I'm following an animal, I'm following the same animal. I'm able to find back a trail that I lost earlier. Also, do record your videos, your trading sessions, or at least with pictures. Also, something that is super useful is to use journaling, that is recording on a map the different steps and the path of your walk that will enable you to recall some details that you wouldn't have recalled otherwise. And by recalling these details, you memorize them much better. So actually the journal is more the experience of writing the journal than actually the fact of keeping these papers. And with these video records of your training session, do pause them under this video. I'm going then to analyze them, look at it with them. You can basically host it on YouTube, you can host it anywhere, on Google Drive, on whatever places. But the goal is to start generating this kind of memories, this kind of experience, and then to have other people who can then comment on it. We're all learning. There's absolutely no problem in being confronted with a trail that stops and you're not able to find it back. But by perseverance, by sharing, by getting tips from other people, you're going to get much, much better. So if now you have the opportunity to go for a cyber tracker evaluation or a workshop, trading workshop, please do so. This is going to help you tremendously by being helped by people who are really a senior tracker. I'm not. I'm just sharing what I know about tracking and trading. And if you have the opportunity to have a workshop with people like René Nota or John Ryder, who are two main person in Europe, tracker in Europe, delivering these workshop and evaluations, please do so. It's so invaluable. And lastly, enjoy your time outside. Here, this is a beautiful times to be spent, and definitely have a good walk in the woods. Thank you. Bye-bye.